no secret they don't like one another. Sharks and the Storm. Goes way back to 2008 to when Big Ben Ross whacked little Cooper Cronk.
Well, what do you do here? An elbow to a kicker and it's late.
Brett White stepped in way front rowers did in those days.
Oh, then he gets him.
8 years later, Sharks win a club record of 15 games straight.
Goodbye!
15 straight for the Storm. Get them in round 26, clinching the minor premiership.
There it is. Just too good.
But weeks later, the Sharks reversed that result to win their first and only grand final.
The Sharks after 50 seasons of rugby league.
Round 6, 2017, and they're at it again. Going off like firecrackers. Gallen and Maloney, Chambers and our man Cronk. Round 4, 2018.
Cameron.
It's public enemy number 1.
Cameron, go.
Cameron Smith, sin bin for the first time in his career.
Wow.
This carry-on deeply upsetting the Shire.
Have you ever seen an ovation like this?
Gotta keep them separated.
These days, the Sharks have a villain of their own. Ronaldo Mulatalo.
And Ronaldo lets the fans know about it.
Nicho Hynes, he's found form. Braden Trindle, Britton Nickera, Adam Fanua-Blake.
How are you gonna stop that?
Up against the acrobatic coats, Hughes, Munster, and yes, they're back. Nelson Asafa-Solomona.
Look at the big boy move.
Plus the cheeky Harry Grant, perhaps the only man alive capable of putting a smile on his cranky coach's dime.
Saturday night on Fox League.
What a matchup. 7:30, Super Saturday, the latest edition of the Sharks versus the Storm, right here on Fox League.
Welcome to NRL 360 Rugby League from every angle. Joining me the great Gordon Tallis. Let's bring the journo Australian James Hooper and Dave Riccio. I've just noticed I'm the only bloke with hair on this panel tonight.
We're in that type of mood tonight, are we, Braith?
Ruthless, but
Sharks, don't get angry at me, boys. Come on. All right, Sharks up against the Storm. It's going to be a big one. Nicho Hynes is in form. The last 2 games have been his best. Cameron Munster, obviously, he's been in good form as well, as have the Melbourne Storm. This sets up to be an absolute beauty.
Yeah, absolute cracker. And a really good test for the Sharks, guys, because, as we know, they've been the Burke and Wills of the NRL. They've travelled far and wide, and they finally get back home for the first time in about 5 to 6 weeks. It's a really good opportunity. They fell short against the Bulldogs at home, their first serious test against quality opposition. They lost to the Raiders, another quality opposition. I think they'll be primed for this to test the Storm.
As we saw in the teaser, a couple of these games have got pretty ugly, Gordy, over the years.
I forgot a lot, mate. I forgot about a lot of that. So that's a lot of niggle, and it will start again. It'll be a sellout, won't it, Dave?
Yeah.
At Shark Park. But look, Melbourne Storm hit some really good form last week. They tended to give up late or just put the cue in the rack. But I don't think that's going to happen in the Sharks. Well, Nicho's starting to get his running game back, and it's going to be a great battle.
no, there's an outstanding history in terms of the rivalry, and that teaser did a brilliant job of outlining it. Will Chambers used to love it. He was the king of the sledge and the king of the niggle. He had plenty to say over the years.
Gallen used to go
yeah, absolutely. I can remember covering a few of those games.
Good.
So there'll be plenty of feeling in this. An opportunity for Cronulla because, yes, you know, they have been good to date. But Melbourne off the back of a 64-0 annihilation over West Tigers. This will give us a true reading on exactly where Cronulla sit.
Well, we know what Melbourne can do, and they are the premiership favourites at the moment. We'll go into that a little bit later. The Sharks are going under the radar, and probably people underestimate them at the moment, or do they? I mean, this is their first real test. They haven't, not real test, but they haven't really beaten any heavyweights this year. So this is their chance to, like you said, stand up and put their hand up and show us they're the real deal, right?
Well, they went awfully close. Don't forget, Las Vegas against the reigning premiers. They went awfully close in Vegas, and again, I mentioned it earlier. They had the opportunity down in Canberra. They blew that. with only seconds to spare. The Bulldogs at home, and this is their test. Look, they're without Hazelton and Teague Wilton. I think there's significant outs for the Sharks, but they do have depth. They keep on bringing young, talented forwards into this system. Jesse Colquhoun's a great example. But to Hoops' point, we're going to get a really good read on where they're at.
I think the fact that they've been beaten by the reigning premiers round one, but then also the Bulldogs and the Raiders as well, that probably gives you a decent read that I don't think they are the top four side that, with the addition of Adam Fanua-Blake, everybody expected that they would be. So they're also still finding their way in terms of their halves. Trindle was on at the beginning of the year. Last few weeks, he's been a little shaky, whereas it's been Nicho, who was shaky at the start of the year and has been more dominant.
What comes first, Braith? The forward pack dominating or the halves?
Always the forward pack.
Yeah.
Always the forward pack. And, you know, Adam Fanua-Blake was great last week. Nicho Hynes, as I mentioned, has found his best form the last few weeks. Trindle, not so much. So Trindle's been kind of in form on fire when Nicho wasn't so much, and then now they've swapped. Can they both get it together? If they can both find form at the same time, they probably go to that top four echelon.
Yeah, look, one thing I know is the absolute belief that Craig Fitzgibbon, that to your point, that these halves will come together in time. And I think that's the key point. They're still very raw as a combination. It's still in its infancy as far as building that trust.
Raw in the combination.
What, how many games do you think they've played together?
Well, they played together for nearly 2 years.
No, Hoops, no chance.
Nicho was
2
injured
seasons,
at stages.
no way.
Well,
no
hang
way.
on. Well, they were the starting halves for the Sharks at the beginning of last year.
Yeah,
They were.
Yeah,
and
okay.
Trindle got suspended, Nicho got injured. Yes, they've been in and out, but still, they've been together
20
long enough.
games,
I
you'd
wouldn't
say.
say it's in its infancy.
Hynes had injuries last year. We saw Atkinson play some games. They haven't played a long stretch of consistent football together. I think this is their season, no doubt. This is the season where you want to see them go. But it's a time thing.
Yeah.
And you're right, Hynes has been the dominant half and Trindle's been sitting back.
Neither one of them have been poor by any stretch. It's just if they can both fire at the same time, I think that would get them to the level they need to be at. Where do you
There's
have
one
them?
have to take advantage. So what happens normally, there's got to be a dominant half. And Nicho was trying to be the dominant half when he was out. Trindle really stood up. Are they trying to be too polite, Braith? You know, you get some guys and they don't run the side. They sit back a little bit and one bloke doesn't put the hand up and go. Because Joey always used to tease, take the reins, Matty, when he get injured.
Yeah.
But Joey always wanted the reins. The good ones want the reins in the hand.
I think you'd rather Nicho be the dominant half because we know what he can do and
Second fiddle.
you know, you'd probably prefer. They go into premiership contention if Nicho's playing his best for their team and he's the sole playmaker or the dominant one. If Trindle is, they can get to the finals. Not sure they could win a comp. If Nicho's playing great and Trindle's just playing a second fiddle, that puts him in the premiership contention. In my opinion, you'd prefer that than the other way around. Now, Harry Grant returns just in time for Origin this week. Are the Storm clear premiership favourites?
I think they are. I think that they have been all season, Gordon.
Yeah, last week I think they did. The last couple of weeks getting beaten by the Raiders. I think Dolphins got them. You know, St George beat them early in the year. It wasn't the Melbourne Storm of the past where they just shut you out. And I thought that there was no clear favourite. They did beat the Tigers down there, and that was the best 80-minute performance they put in all year.
If you look at their roster, Dave, I think they've got the best depth of any of the 17 teams in the competition. And we don't want to see anybody get hurt, but if anything happens to Pappenhausen, they've got a backup in Suafolongo. Jonah Pezzet's injured at the moment, but they've also
He's
got
back
great...
within a month.
Well, there you go. See, so they've also got great depth in the halves. They're packed with the addition of Stefano this season and now Harry back this week. I still think they are the benchmark side.
Yeah, they're the benchmark side and they're the premiership favourites because it all comes back to what we know what wins comps, and it's the spine.